Welcome to another episode of me reading you Harry Potter. I looked ahead at the chapter link today, and it looks like it's about 15 minutes, so it could be a short video. If that's the case, I'm gonna go ahead and throw in a bonus ghost story at the end. So if you stick around till the end, you'll get a nice little ghost story of a personal experience of mine. We're going to go ahead and get started with chapter 8 here in just a second. Let me do some shameless plugs. We got some podcasts out there. It's called The Stone Gauntlet, and My Brain is Hanging Upside Down. They are available on all of the podcast formats. You can find the links right here. That's Stone Gauntlet. That's right there. You can also find it on my YouTube page at Crook Irish Studios, and the link to that is right here. We recently released a new ghost hunting video. Now with the shameless plugs out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with some Harry Potter. Okay. Chapter 8. The Potions Master. There, look. Where? Next to the tall kid with the red hair. Wearing the glasses? Did you see his face? Did you see his scar? Whispers followed Harry from the moment he left his dormitory the next day. People lining up outside classrooms stood on tiptoe to get a look at him or doubled back to pass him in the corridors again, staring. Harry wished they wouldn't because he was trying to concentrate on finding his way to classes. There were. Let me check the music. It just went like. Oh, okay. That's good. There were 142 staircases at Hogwarts. Wide sweeping ones, narrow, rickety ones, some that led somewhere different on a Friday, some with a vanishing step halfway up that you had to remember to jump. Then there were doors that wouldn't open unless you asked politely, or tickled them in exactly the right place. And doors that weren't really doors at all, but solid walls just pretending. It was also very hard to remember where anything was, because it all seemed to move around a lot. The people in the portraits the people in the portraits kept going to visit each other, and Harry was sure the coats of armor could walk. The ghosts didn't help either. It was always a nasty shock when one of them glided suddenly through a door you were trying to open. Nearly Headless Nick was always happy to point new Gryffindors in the right direction, but Peeves the Poltergeist was worth 2 locked doors and a trick staircase if you met him when you were late for class. He would drop waste paper baskets on your head, pull rugs from under your feet, pelt you with bits of chalk, or sneak up behind you, invisible, grab your nose and screech, "Got your conch!" Even worse than Peeves, if that were possible, was the caretaker, Argus Filch. Harry and Ron managed to get on the wrong side of him on their very first morning. Filch found them trying to force their way through a door that unluckily turned out to be the entrance to the out-of-bounds corridor on the 3rd floor. He wouldn't believe they were lost, was sure they were trying to break into it on purpose, and was threatening to lock them in the dungeons when they were rescued by Professor Quirrell, who was passing. Filch owned a cat called Miss Norris, a scrawny, dust-colored creature with bulging, lamp-like eyes, just like Filch's, Mrs. Norris. Mrs. Norris. She patrolled the corridors alone. Break a rule in front of her, put just one toe out of line, and she'd whisk off to Filch, who'd appear, wheezing, 2 seconds later. Filch knew the secret passageways of the school better than anyone, except perhaps the Weasley twins, and could pop up as suddenly as any of the ghosts. The students all hated him, and it was the dearest ambition of many to give Mrs. Norris a good kick. But then, once you had managed to find them, there were the classes themselves. There was a lot more to magic, as Harry quickly found out, than waving your wand and saying a few funny words. They had to study the night skies through their telescopes every Wednesday at midnight and learn the names of different stars and movements of the planets. 3 times a week, they went out to the greenhouses behind the castle to study herbology with a dumpy little witch called Professor Sprout, where they learned how to take care of all the strange plants and fungi and found out what they were used for. Easily the most boring class was History of Magic, which was the only one taught by a ghost. Professor Binns had been very old indeed when he had fallen asleep in front of the staff room fire and got up next morning to teach, leaving his body behind. Binns droned on and on while they scribbled down names and dates and got Emmerich the Evil and Ulrich the Oddball mixed up. Professor Flitwick, the charms teacher, was a tiny little wizard who had to stand on a pile of books to see over his desk. At the start of the first class, he took the roll call, and when he reached Harry's name, he gave an excited squeak and toppled out of sight. Kind of like, squeak! Professor McGonagall was again different. Harry had been quite right to think she wasn't a teacher to cross. Strict and clever, she gave them a talking to the moment they sat down in her first class. Transfiguration is some of the most complex and dangerous magic you will learn at Hogwarts, she said. Anyone messing around in my class will leave and not come back. You have been warned. Then she changed her desk into a pig and back again. They were all very impressed and couldn't wait to get started, but soon realized they weren't going to be changing the furniture into animals for a long time. After taking a lot of complicated notes, they were each given a match and started to turn it into a needle. By the end of the lesson, only Hermione Granger had made any difference to her match. Professor McGonagall showed the class how it had gone all silver and pointy, and gave Hermione a rare smile. The class everyone had really been looking forward to was Defense Against the Dark Arts. But Quirrell's lessons turned out to be a bit of a joke. His classroom smelled strongly of garlic, which everyone said was to ward off a vampire he'd met in Romania, and was afraid would be coming back to get him one of these days. His turban, he told them, had been given to him by an African prince as a thank you for getting rid of a troublesome zombie. But they weren't sure they believed this story. For one thing, when Seamus Finnegan asked eagerly to hear how Quirrell had fought off the zombie, Quirrell went pink and started talking about the weather. For another, they had noticed that a funny smell hung around the turban, and the Weasley twins insisted that it was stuffed full of garlic as well, so that Quirrell was protected wherever he went. Harry was very relieved to find out that he wasn't miles behind everyone else. Lots of the people had come from Muggle families, and like him, hadn't had any idea that they were witches and wizards. But there was so much to learn that even people like Ron didn't have much of a head start. Friday was an important day for Harry and Ron. They finally managed to find their way down to the Great Hall for breakfast without getting lost once. "What have we got today?" Harry asked Ron as he poured sugar on his porridge. "Double potions with the Slytherins," said Ron. "Snape's head is Slytherin house. They say he always favors him. We'll be able to see if it's true." Wish McGonagall favored us," said Harry. Professor McGonagall was head of Gryffindor house, but it hadn't stopped her from giving them a huge pile of homework the day before. Just then the mail arrived. Harry had gotten used to this by now, but it had given him a bit of a shock on the first morning when about 100 owls had suddenly streamed into the Great Hall during breakfast, circling the tables until they saw their owners and dropping letters and packages onto their laps. Hedwig hadn't brought Harry anything so far. She sometimes flew in to nibble his ear and have a bit of toast before going off to sleep in the owlry with the other school owls. This morning, however, She fluttered down between the marmalade and the sugar bowl and dropped a note onto Harry's plate. Harry tore it open at once. It said in a very untidy scrawl, "Dear Harry, I know you get Friday afternoons off, so would you like to come and have a cup of tea with me around 3? I want to hear all about your first week. Send us an answer back with Hedwig. Hagrid." Harry borrowed Ron's quill, scribbled, "Yes, please, see you later" on the back of the note, and sent Hedwig off again. It was lucky that Harry had tea with Hagrid to look forward to, because the potions lesson turned out to be the worst thing that had happened to him so far. At the start of term banquet, Harry had gotten the idea that Professor Snape disliked him. By the end of the first potions lesson, he knew he'd been wrong. Snape didn't dislike Harry, he hated him. Potion lessons took place down in one of the dungeons. It was colder here than up in the main castle. It would have been quite creepy enough without the pickled animals floating in glass jars all around the walls. Snape, like Flitwick, started the class by taking the roll call, and like Flitwick, he paused at Harry's name. "Ah, yes," he said softly. "Harry Potter, our new celebrity." Draco Malfoy and his friends Crabbe and Goyle snickered behind their hands. Snape finished calling the names and looked up at the class. His eyes were black, like Hagrid's. But they had none of Hagrid's warmth. They were cold and empty and made you think of dark tunnels. "You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making," he began. He spoke in barely more than a whisper, but they caught every word. Like Professor McGonagall, Snape had the gift of keeping a class silent without effort. "As there is little foolish one waving here, many of you will hardly believe this is magic. I don't expect you will understand the beauty of the softly simmering cauldron with its shimmering fumes, the delicate power liquids that creep through human veins, bewitching the mind and snaring the senses. I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even stopper death. If you want as big a bunch of dunderheads as I usually have to teach." More silence followed this little speech. Harry and Ron exchanged looks with raised eyebrows. Hermione Granger was on the edge of her seat and looked desperate to start proving that she wasn't a dunderhead. "Potter!" said Snape suddenly. "What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" "Powdered root of what to an infusion of what?" Harry glanced at Ron, who looked as stumped as he was. Hermione's head had shot into the air. "I don't know, sir," said Harry. Snape's lips curled into a sneer. "Tut, tut. Fame clearly isn't everything." He ignored Hermione's hand. "Let's try again, Potter. Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar?" Hermione stretched her hand as high into the air as it would go without her leaving her seat. But Harry didn't have the faintest idea what a bezoar was. He tried to look at Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle, who were shaking with laughter. He tried not to look at Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle, who were shaking with laughter. I, I don't know, sir." "Thought you wouldn't open a book before coming, Potter?" Harry forced himself to keep looking straight into those cold eyes. He had looked through his books at the Dursleys, but did Snape expect him to remember everything in 1,000 magical herbs and fungi? Snape was still ignoring Hermione's quivering hand. What is the difference, Potter, between monk's hood and wolf's bane? At this, Hermione stood up, her hand stretching toward the dungeon ceiling. I don't know, said Harry quietly. I think Hermione does, though. Why don't you try her? A few people laughed. Harry caught Seamus's eye, and Seamus winked. Snape, however, was not pleased. Sit down! He snapped at Hermione. For your information, Potter, Asphodel and Wormwood make a sleeping potion so powerful it is known as a draught of living death. A bezoar is a stone taken from the stomach of a goat, and it will save you from most poisons. As for monk's hood and wolf's bane, they are the same plant, which also goes by the name of aconite. Well, why aren't you all copying that down? There was a sudden rummaging for quills and parchment. Over the noise, Snape said, and the points will be taken from Gryffindor House for your cheek, Potter. Things didn't improve for the Gryffindors as the potions lessons continued. Snape put them all into pairs and set them to mixing up a simple potion to cure boils. He swept around in his long black cloak, watching them weigh dried nettles and crush snake fangs, criticizing almost everyone except Malfoy, who he seemed to like. He was just telling everyone to look at the perfect way Malfoy had stewed his horned slugs when clouds of acid green smoke and a loud hissing filled the dungeon. Neville had somehow managed to melt Seamus's cauldron into a twisted blob, and their potion was seeping across the stone floor, burning holes in people's shoes. Within seconds, the whole class was standing on their stools, while Neville, who had been drenched in the potion when the cauldron collapsed, moaned in pain as angry red boils sprang up all over his arms and legs. Idiot boy! Snarled Snape, clearing the spilled potion away with one wave of his wand. I suppose you added the porcupine quills before taking the cauldron off the fire. Neville whimpered as boils started to pop up all over his nose. Take him to the hospital wing. Snape spat at Seamus. Then he rounded on Harry and Ron, who had been working next to Neville. You, Potter, why didn't you tell him to add the quills? Thought he'd make you look good if he got it wrong, did you? That's another point you've lost for Gryffindor. This was so unfair that Harry opened his mouth to argue, but Ron kicked him behind their cauldron. Don't push it, he muttered. I've heard Snape can turn very nasty. As they climbed the steps out of the dungeon an hour later, Harry's mind was racing and his spirits were low. He lost 2 points for Gryffindor in his very first week. Why did Snape hate him so much? Cheer up, said Ron. Snape's always taking points off Fred and George. Can I come and meet Hagrid with you? At 5 to 3 they left the castle and made their way across the grounds. Hagrid lived in a small wooden house on the edge of the forbidden forest. A crossbow and a pair of galoshes were outside the front door. When Harry knocked, they heard a frantic scrabbling from inside and several booming barks. Then Hagrid's voice rang out saying, Back! Bang! Back! Hagrid's big hairy face appeared in the crack as he pulled the door open. Hang on, he said. Back, Fang! He let them in, struggling to keep a hold on their collar of an enormous black boarhound. There was only one room inside. Hams and peasants were hanging from the ceiling. A copper kettle was boiling on the open fire, and in the corner stood a massive bed with a patchwork quilt over it. Make yourselves at home, said Hagrid, letting go of Fang, who bounded straight at Ron and started licking his ears. Like Hagrid, Fang was clearly not as fierce as he looked. This is Ron, Harry told Hagrid, who was pouring boiling water into a large teapot and putting rock cakes onto a plate. Another Weasley, eh? Said Hagrid, glancing at Ron's freckles. I spent half me life chasing your twin brothers away from the forest. Oh, Coreycraft, thank you so much for the lurk. Everybody go check out Coreycraft. She is an awesome ass streamer. And shoot her a follow. Another Weasley, eh? Said Hagrid, glancing at Ron's freckles. I spent half me life chasing your twins away from the forest. Oh, people on YouTube, that's Koricraft. Go check him out on Twitch. I'm trying to remember that not everybody gets access to this chat. Let's see. The rock cakes were shapeless lumps with raisins that almost broke their teeth, but Harry and Ron pretended to be enjoying them as they told Hagrid all about their first lessons. Fang rested his head on Harry's knee and drooled all over his robes. Harry and Ron were delighted to hear Hagrid call Filch, "That old gilt." "And as for that cat, Mrs. Norris, I'd like to introduce her to Fang sometime. Do you know every time I get up to the school, she follows me everywhere? Can't get rid of her. Filch puts her up to it." Harry told Hagrid about Snape's lessons. Hagrid, like Ron, told Harry not to worry about it, that Snape liked hardly any of the students. "But he seemed to really hate me." "Rubbish," said Hagrid. "Why should he?" Yet Harry couldn't help thinking that Hagrid didn't quite meet his eyes when he said that. How's your brother Charlie?" Hagrid asked Ron. "I liked him a lot. Great with animals." Harry wondered if Hagrid had changed the subject on purpose. While Ron told Hagrid all about Charlie's work with dragons, Harry picked up a piece of paper that was lying on the table under the tea cozy. It was a cutting from the Daily Prophet. Gringotts, break-in latest. Investigations continue into the break-in at Gringotts on... Oh, Damien School, thank you. Thank you for the follow, bro. I appreciate it. I'll give you a shout out. Guys, go check out Damien School and shoot his channel a follow. Let's see, shout out. Thanks, brother. Hello. Welcome to the channel. We do Harry Potter reads every Wednesday night and then podcasts on the weekend. Oh, hello, Corey Craft's husband. It's a pleasure to meet you. Your wife is an awesome streamer. And Corey, you kick ass. You guys are just in time because we're about to finish the chapter. And then I'm gonna tell a ghost story for everybody. Since it's such a short chapter. Let's see. Investigations. Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for showing up and thank you for following. Investigations continue into the break-in at Gringotts on 31st July, widely believed to be the work of dark wizards or witches unknown. Gringotts goblins today insisted that nothing had been taken. The vault that was searched had in fact been emptied the same day. But we're not telling you what's in there, so keep your noses out of it if you know what's good for you, said a Gringotts spokesgoblin this afternoon. You know what, guys? I think from now on, Gringotts are just gonna talk like 1920s mafiosos. Harry remembered Ron telling him on the train that someone had tried to rob Gringotts, but Ron hadn't mentioned the date. Love it. Yeah, I know. It fits so well. Because it actually kind of fits their character. But Ron hadn't mentioned the date. Hagrid, said Harry. The Gringotts break-in happened on my birthday. It might have been happening while we were there. There was no doubt about it. Hagrid definitely didn't meet Harry's eyes this time. He grunted and offered him another rock cake. Harry read the story again. The vault that was searched had in fact been emptied earlier that same day. Hagrid had emptied Vault 700 and 13. If you could call it emptying it, taking out that grubby little package, had that been what the thieves were looking for? As Harry and Ron walked back to the castle for dinner, their pockets weighed down with rock cakes they'd been too polite to refuse. Harry thought that none of the lessons he'd had so far had given him as much to think about as tea with Hagrid. Had Hagrid collected that package? Had Hagrid? Oh my God! Had Hagrid collected that package just in time? Where was it now? And did Hagrid know something about Snape that he didn't want to tell Harry? I swear to God, sometimes J.K. Rowling, uh, just tongue twisters or shit. Oh yeah, it happens to me like all the time, Corey. But I'm trying to keep this as realistic as possible. Um, so I guess that is the end of chapter 8, guys. Next Wednesday I will do chapter 9. But as I promised, since it's like such a roughly short stream, I'll do you guys a quick ghost story. You guys know me from the ghost hunts that we do on YouTube, which you can find over here. Not super popular yet, but it will be one day. In various podcasts and shit. We dig ghosts. I love spooky stories. Good, you're gonna like this one, cause I dig ghosts. I love them. If there's a ghost somewhere, I'm running towards it. And I think we actually found something in South Mountain, but that's a story for another time. So this is a since we're talking about witches and witchcraft and Harry Potter, I thought it only fitting to tell my that's me in big storms. Oh my God. I feel you, man. I could live in Seattle because I just love constant rain. I think rain and snow give the road character. Whereas sun is just too fucking happy for me. But that's just how I feel about weather. Oh, okay. So this is a story about the dangers of an Ouija board. I used to meddle with them a lot as a kid. And we'd always get like a ghost on the line, and then we'd do everything in our power to piss it off, to get it to like rise up or do something. And like countless times, ghosts had been like, you know, I'm gonna kill you, and it's terrifying like the first time you hear it. But like the fourth or fifth time you hear it, and like nothing's fucking happened, you start to go, okay, dude, where you at? You know. So we're upstairs in my room in Brunswick, Maryland. I was in high school, senior at the time. And we had just got done playing some Halo. Like, 'cause that just completely aged the story. But we had just gotten done playing some Halo, and we're like, let's mess with the Ouija board, you know. So we jump up on the bed. Yeah, Halo 1 on the original Xbox, guys. I remember how excited I was to get that. So we jump up on the bed. I got me and my friend. We lit some candles, turned off all the lights. My black lab, who I named Indiana after Indiana Jones, who was like my fucking idol growing up. He was there chilling in the room with me, right? And we get a ghost on the fucking board. And of course, me being young and dumb, I start fucking with it like I normally do. And you know, it starts to get pissed off. I almost went to school for archaeology because of Indy. I know. I wish archaeology was all about just beating the shit out of Nazis and collecting artifacts, because that would be 100% the job that I want. But unfortunately, it's a lot more just digging into bones, kind of like what Dr. Grant does in the very beginning of Jurassic Park. Um, Same. Yeah, dude, that would be like my dream job. Just like, oh, I could legally punch Nazis and just fucking collect artifacts all day and yell at people that they belong in museums. Okay, I'm I'm completely getting off track. So we're sitting there on the fucking Ouija board and we start to piss off this ghost as we always do. And It says something threatening at me. Oh no, Corey, you're good. That's me. I just diverge completely off on tangents. Um, so I say something. It says something to me that was kind of like showing me that it was starting to get angry. And so I was like, all right, dude, what are you gonna do? Fucking kill us? And the pointer goes to yes. And I'd seen this thing like fucking 5, 6 times by this point. I've done the Ouija board up and down the coast from the fucking Grand Canyon to like the backwoods of Maryland. and and this is the only time it actually kind of freaked me out because it went to yes and I started laughing at him because I'm like, you're not the fucking first ghost to threaten me. And not the last, though I did try to fight him. He never showed up. Um, I was like, you're not the first ghost to threaten me. But right then, the fucking dog stands up in the room, and all of its hair on its back bristles up. Like, just straight up, psh, and he starts growling into the darkness of the room. Like, just straight up, like, as if something was, like, close to us, and this dog was the only thing between me and it. And then it ran to the window as if it was chasing something out of the room, barked a couple times into the night, and then came back and sat down next to me. And I just remember looking at him and being like, "You just kind of saved me from a demon, you know?" And I turned to my friend. I'm like, "Dude, let's just go back to fucking playing Halo because that's a little too realistic." And that's probably the closest I've come to well, not the closest. I think a ghost actually hurt me on my current ghost trip because we got some weird shit that happened in the South Mountain. I've noped out of there. I've noped out. No, we started playing Halo. We just flipped the board over. We had no look. I'm gonna tell you guys this right now. The studies of the Ouija board, whether paranormal or not, is a very dangerous tool because the Ouija board actually from a scientific point of view, reaches that point of our brain where we shove those transient thoughts. Like those ones that are like, I could jump off this cliff. Or I can like fucking swerve into traffic. You know, the ones that we just let pass and go, that's a crazy idea. The Ouija board actually brings it out of us and gives us justification to do that. Um, and so that's why on like the weak-minded it's very dangerous, but if you want to look at it from a fucking paranormal point of view and you look at it Aleister Crowley way, Crowley wouldn't fucking touch an Ouija board without like at least lighting fucking 15 candles and speaking like an hour of incantations. So my suggestion, just don't fuck with them. that's that's what I've learned. I've put them away, and I just don't mess with them at all anymore. It's the one occult object type thing I'll never bring into my house. Yeah, agreed. I've had my fun with them and they're done. That's how I feel about Ouija boards. You know, I will ghost hunt. I'll get attacked by a ghost. I got attacked by a fucking ghost potentially in South Mountain. And actually sprained my ankle. But we're releasing part 2 of that video where I'm gonna like fucking clarify that. I think on this most recent ghost hunt, we came the closest to the paranormal veal as ghost hunters that we have ever come. Because the first one, Hickory Grove, was potentially a it's just a fucking chapel. It's not really haunted. The second one was Bunnyman Bridge, which we disproved by walking through it at midnight. The third one was a documentary on the Mothman, talk about residual hauntings. Um, but nothing much more than that because the Mothman had his reign in the 1980s, in that area, like in that area. He could be hanging around Chicago right now. But the fourth one was just like this D-list fucking cryptid that we wanted the fucking hunt as a one-off episode, and ended up turning into a two-parter that spanned about 6 months because in the middle of it I sprained my ankle. And I remember the day after it happened because it was the second time we've been up there, and the second time shit got fucked up, and I was just like, I could turn back here. It's like we've actually reached a point where we could be fucking with the paranormal. And I remember going, yeah, but I can't call myself a ghost hunter. If I see a ghost and the first thing I do is run, um, I can't call myself a ghost hunter. So I went back out there, and we got part 2 dropping within the next few weeks, and you'll see the end result of that, and it does get a little bit creepy. Uh, but anyway, that's all my ghost stuff today, guys. Don't forget you can find all that on my YouTube channel, which is right here. We also have some podcasts going, and that's the Stone Gauntlet. That's all things nerdy. And Upside Down Brain, which is all about music. So if you guys are interested in any of that, we'd love to have you over there. If you ever wanted to like discuss stuff or give feedback, we also have a great Discord that we're trying to get off the ground. It's also where we will post our schedules for the show as soon as we know when we're going to be doing the podcasts for that weekend. But I can guarantee you this: I will be back next week for another episode of Storytime with Crook, where we will do Chapter 9. Everyone, I hope you all have a fantastic night. Thanks again for the follow. Let me double check that name. It's Damien School. I appreciate it. And thank you again for stopping by, Choreographed. You guys are awesome. And honestly, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for everybody supporting me. So thank you. You too. Have a great night, Choreographed. And have a great night as well, Damien School. And everybody else that watches this in the future, have a great day or night or whatever.